Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Breaking Absolutes. I'm really excited today to get to talk to Floor Jansen from the band Nightwish. Before we get deeper into this, just a reminder, if you like what we're doing here in terms of talking to artists in a sort of deeper way, looking at a broad sense of their career, all with an eye towards building more audience for their work because we think it's deserving. Follow us, subscribe to the channel, help us continue to have opportunity to have artists of this caliber. It'd be really helpful. But with that out of the way, what I want to do with Floor before I bring her on is just share a couple of highlights. So for those who are less familiar, you get a sense of the altitude of her talent and the work that she's done, and then we'll sort of progressively get more granular as we have our conversation. So Floor has been a professional in the very real sense of the word since the age of 16, and she can keep me honest on all of this once we pull her on and tell me if I've got something wrong. But that's when she joined the band After Forever. She has collaborated, and I always use this as a hallmark of greatness. She's collaborated with some of the some of the most important musicians and composers that are working today. And we'll talk a little bit about her work there, but I think it's a sign of the quality of her work that she sought after to do these kinds of collaborations. And it's sort of a who's who of musicians there. We won't have time to talk about them all, but we'll hit a few. She won, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, the Booma Culture Pop Award, which is a prestigious Dutch award for an artist or band that's made an important contribution to Dutch music, which is fantastic. And those of you who are Nightwish fans, which is probably most of you, the band itself, for its most recent album, Human Nature, was up for several Finnish Emma Awards, and it actually won for Metal Album of the Year. And of course, Floor is a distinctive and defining part of that sound now. So I think she rightly receives some of the credit for that. There's no end of chart positions for the two most recent records by Nightwish that Floor was a part of, but just to name a few, it's The Endless Forms Most Beautiful was certified double platinum in Finland. It hit gold in Czech Republic, Germany, Switzerland, and many others. In the U.S., it hit the Billboard charts and climbed all the way to number 8. They had very much the same kind of reception on Human Nature, number 5 in the Billboard charts. And interestingly, and this was something I didn't know, and we may not have time to dig into it, but she was featured in a film that really put a spotlight on female voices in metal. It's called Soaring Highs and Brutal Lows. So the fact that she's included in those that they would follow and chronicle, I think, says something too. So with that as our setup, let me just bring Floor on and we'll talk to the woman herself. Floor, welcome. Hi. Yeah, I'm so pleased that we could make this happen. I know you're very busy, and it's later there for you, so you're more at the end of your day. But so we'll spend an hour or so with you, and then I don't know, you probably still have to work when we're done. But let me, before we get into the, I guess, specific questions, just ask a general question. You know, the whole world's been struggling the past year and a half. How have you weathered the COVID situation? What's that been like for you?
By the summer, maybe in the fall, And as long as you keep thinking that it's almost over, I think that it was pretty doable. And I all of a sudden had a whole summer at home, which wasn't so bad, to be honest. I mean, it was beautiful weather. I got to spend time with my family. My husband is a drummer in a Swedish band called Sabaton, also a very highly active touring band. And all of a sudden, neither of us were touring and we were at home. So I can't really complain about that. But of course, you miss the tours. We were really, right, well, like I said, gonna have a world tour and then nothing happened. So that was very weird. And it started to get harder as it started to get darker and colder here in Sweden where I live. I'm Dutch, but I live in Sweden. And yeah, there's the feeling of, yeah, first we had an idea, but now we actually don't. We hope for this, we hope for that. But every time your hopes are being smashed, you stop hoping, basically. So, okay, we stop doing that. And at this point, I kind of live by the week or by the month,
Yeah.
with the promises that the politicians are making, because really they are pulling the strings of this show. And yeah, I mean, I'm not very impressed by the world leaders, to pull it mildly.
Yeah.
So let's see what happens. But after this forced break, I'm very, very eager to get back out.
Yeah.
And that was maybe something I didn't felt as eager. I think, at least, and I maybe speak for a lot of us, you stop taking a lot of things for granted thanks to this.
Yeah. It's really interesting too, how, for me, I spend a lot of my time right here in my office writing, but there was a psychological sort of confinement that knowing I couldn't do certain things that
Yeah.
created a mental fatigue that I couldn't explain. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's an unnatural situation for us to be put in. Um, and some people got huge amounts of times on their hand, time that you usually don't have.
Yeah.
And I think depending on your character and maybe financial status, home situation, it can be either very interesting or very, very, very horrible.
Yeah. Well, it's good to hear that it's had a silver lining for you a little bit. Um, and I think there's generally hope right now that things are opening up, and
Yeah.
particularly live performance, which is a material impact for you as a musician. Um, I
Mm.
guess fingers crossed it doesn't take a strange turn between now and. Um,
You know what? I'm going to have my first show now on Thursday. It's a solo show in the Netherlands. I'm going to have
oh,
my flight tomorrow. Yet I've been having a cold all week, and
oh
I
no.
just took a test, that it's a test you have to take to see if you can fly. And really, I don't believe I'm going to do the show until I'm actually on stage, because even last week, the amount of people getting infected with the virus went up largely in the Netherlands, because the non-vaccinated part of our society is partying again and allowed to travel,
Yeah.
and well, they hang out, close physical contact, so yeah, they get sick.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that's a surprise, but well, it happened. And then the politicians feel the need to put on more restrictions again, and code red, and all alarm bells go off, and you can't do the show, or I have to put restrictions. And okay, well, you know what, we'll see, we'll see.
Yeah.
But I really, really hope so, and that, with all the knowledge of a pandemic as we have it today, as we should have had a year and a half ago, we're not going to have any more surprises, because it's weird how they talk about this virus as if it has varieties, which it doesn't. It has mutations,
Yeah.
but it's a lot of fear mongering that I'm so fucking done with. Part of my French here.
No, I 100% agree with you there. It's not that I think you or I or many people are cavalier about it. I think you take it seriously, and you
Oh,
you
absolutely,
do
it was
all of,
super serious.
but there is it has, especially here. I don't, I guess I don't follow the international stage as much as I do what's going on in the U.S. But there's not a piece of information that comes out that isn't somehow weaponized by both sides of our politicians to
Yeah.
ultimately it must be about retaining or gaining power. But it's been
Yes.
created so much division in our country.
Yeah.
It's a true sadness for me
Yeah.
when I
Can
see it.
imagine.
So
But then again, you had a president that maybe also didn't really help to bring things together. Not
yeah,
that I want to go into American politics, but in
yeah,
general, world leadership, health organization, the World Health Organization somehow managed to not be prepared for a pandemic, which on a planet that is overpopulated with one species, us, is a little bit weird to me. And that's from there it went, and then there are the politicians who just see personal gain. And yeah, I mean, what happened in the US is I did follow a little bit, of course, what was happening in the beginning of the pandemic was just horrifying. And just to see how slow the system sort of jumped on fixing it.
yeah,
And now I'm merely complaining towards the lack of real um, focus on how the next things are going to happen, and the fear mongering around the Delta mutation variety. I think it's super disturbing, because the first ones to be really affected by it are people like me, and I've had it with that.
yeah, yeah. That's right. I, like you, I have a lot of friends that are um, in the live performance industry. I mean, it's a central part of how the money is made now in music. We'll try to avoid, I think, the conversation about DSPs. Unless you're very passionate about sharing an opinion, I have a very low opinion of them, and it's foisted so much additional pressure on live performance and merchandising for musicians to make a living, and I think it's very criminal. But so when something like this happens and it removes that a central part of how you probably feed your family and pay your mortgage and all of those things that we have to do, uh, I would like to think that we did have this thing happen in America. They opened up a part of the relief fund for what they call gig professionals, which includes musicians. So there was a little bit of relief, but it was negligible compared to what you'd make going out. So
If you be able to,
there's just, I don't think, enough regard for people who make a living doing live performance. And when they say that in America, they're thinking about LeBron James and these basketball players who are doing live performing and making $30 million a year. They're not thinking about a guy who goes into a club and comes away with $300 so he can buy milk. Anyway, sorry, I don't want to rant about it.
Well, let us think about the bright future where we all learned a lot of valuable life lessons.
There you go.
Yeah, because I do like the silver lining, as you say. I want to keep focusing on it, and that's also how I've been going through this whole phase of life.
Yeah.
Like I said, focusing on the things that I do have instead of the things that I don't, because it's frustrating and you can't change it.
Yeah.
Yet I found myself utterly frustrated and angry about a situation I couldn't change, as the Dutch government got so frightened about, the partying teenagers. And that was a little like, yeah, okay, this feels like an unnecessary measurement, but health comes first. If anybody knows, it's me. I think it's very important, but you can't be unprepared for situations to come anymore. I don't believe in that anymore. So, but I think now we're really, really, really getting to the end of it. And I'm curious to see how the world is going to look like, let's say in half a year after the pandemic. If we really are able to go back to exactly how it was before, or if we like to keep on a couple of things that we had during the pandemic. Let's see, I mean, there were good things too.
That's the one I'm most curious about, is even people who have become vaccinated or feel like they have a sufficient immunity because they've had the virus. Is the percentage of those who are going to go back to concerts the same, or is some percentage of those folks just decide it's not quite worth the risk to do that anymore?
Yeah, it may be depending on how, if you have any illnesses, that makes you high risk.
Yeah.
That I find hard to answer. But if people that studied their whole lives to figure these things out say that it's okay, I could imagine taking a leap of faith.
Yeah.
Because health comes in many forms. But like I said, I can't really fill it in because I'm healthy. I don't have any different. I don't have any problems that could spike the problems getting COVID. So yeah, but then again, I'm a singer, so the fear of the virus has been there. And a fear if it would affect my lungs and I would not be able to belt out the notes that I'm belting out now.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody would be very sad about that.
Yeah.
But I really, before we move on, you made a very insightful comment there that I want to highlight, and that is that health comes in many ways, and as important as corporeal health is, of the body. There's people who are languishing because they aren't able to spend time going to a concert where they feel a sort of sorority and fraternity with people who are like-minded.
Yeah.
And mental health, which I think the music that you make provides, some relief for, has been
Yeah.
absent now for 18 months. And
Yeah.
I've never really heard that as a central part of the conversation when they talk about health. It's usually fixated
No.
on the body. And that's a miss for sure.
Absolutely, but I'm not sure. I mean, the world's still a big place. I have been reading on a lot of problems, mental health problems that have spiked during these pandemic days, and the people that already had a tendency towards depression or have depression or even manic depressed, yeah, put them in a pandemic. It's horrible. Or people that suffer from abuse at home, or all of a sudden forced to live at home with their abusers. There are a lot of things that happened that we don't know of, probably,
That's
as
right.
of yet. Not to mention all the problems that come from people that didn't go to the doctors because they thought it's safer to stay away from hospitals right now, even though I have this pain in my belly or this whatever you might have. But I totally agree that concerts and music are food for the soul, and they are a vital part of our society. Else I would not have become as successful as I became. And I don't want to brag, but that is because people need this, and we need to share it. And through the internet, it's only, I did not spend 20 years traveling the whole world because it could also be done by internet.
Yeah.
It's not really replacing the real thing. And thank heavens we have it, though, but it's not the real thing. And it's really, really about time. And I really hope that there will be more recognition for that fact worldwide.
There is I had a conversation a few weeks ago with a woman from London who is an anthropologist, and she has written papers on the very real positive value of metal music in general, but in specific of attending concerts live, and what that means for the people who go. And so I'm just sort of accentuating your point there. It's wonderful, and we're going to talk just a little bit about the virtual concert you guys did, which was amazing, and it's great for fans to be able to stay connected to artists they love in these ways. But it can't be a replacement. There's something that I think is kind of ineffable about being co-located with people, enjoying a moment of live music and performance. Like you just can't simulate that with. You can't do it with VR. You can't do it with anything. And so, and this is what I meant by, when I know that there's been conversations about mental health. What I've never really heard is, the things that people do that ensure or help mental health, aside from pharmaceuticals, are things that we have put the tightest clamp on, and that's having an impact on you. All of which is to say, I'm very excited you're back on. You're out next week is your first show, you said.
No, this week. Thursday.
Okay, this week on Thursday.
On 2 days. Oh God.
Oh wow, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I just realized. Yeah.
We will. We'll at the very end. The last thing I'll do is I'll ask for all of the things that are coming up and a place to point people, so we make sure that everybody watching and who sees this can come see you. And I don't know. And will any of this be televised or through streaming? Are you going to try and couple it, or is it?
No, that really won't be possible. But a year and a half ago, I was going to do a solo show in the Netherlands that got cancelled. I did 10 shows. Well, I planned 10 shows. I did 9. And the 10th, which was going to be the biggest, that never happened. But for that show, I did a crowdfunding campaign because so many people all over the world said, great, you now have a solo career blooming in the Netherlands, but the world's bigger than that, and we want to see you too. well, time didn't allow me to actually say, okay, well, let's start planning an international tour then. So I instead opted for this crowdfunding campaign. If you want to see me live, either come to the Netherlands, or let's see if we can get this crowdfunding, or get the show registered and put it on YouTube then.
Yeah.
And that's what I did, but then the show never happened. But as it is looking like today, and fingers crossed, as I said, I don't trust anything to happen until it finally really does. But if everything stays as it's planned, on the 3rd of September this year, I will do that show. And that will be fully filmed and registered. I'll do a behind the scenes documentary along with it for the rest of the world to also see. So, but yeah, let's hope that if politicians keeps doing their work, we can do that.
Yeah, that's right. Good. That's excellent. Will all of this information that you'll share be available on your website if we point people there?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. That and the stuff I'm doing with Nightwish, because my last show with Nightwish was in late December, December 2018.
Holy cow!
Yeah,
wow. That's a long time.
Yeah, definitely. So of course, 2019, little break making the album. 2020, now we're going to release it, and we released it, but the rest is history. The shows never happened. Yeah. So the virtual show for us that we did in this virtual world, for us, our green bathroom, was the first thing semi-live that we've done ever since. And late this month, late July, where we're gonna do real festivals in Finland with real people. It's gonna be. For us, after even an extra 2 years of waiting, it will be very nice. I'm sure my neck will hurt, like not being used to it anymore. I even jumped over 40 in the time in between, so great.
Yeah, I think you're gonna be like a kid in a candy store, as we say. Like you're gonna be so excited to be in front of people again.
I think I'm just gonna start crying. Let's see what happens. Oh, that's so great. Can't sing.
Can you imagine the audience, the people who are just waiting to get out to concerts? It's going to be, yeah.
It's going to be so magical. My husband plays drums in Sabaton, and they had a big festival in Serbia that's going on. I think maybe still works. It just ended. It was this weekend anyway, and they played last Friday. And if you see the happiness, if we go back to how we thought about mental health and the how it is to be at a concert, just looking at the people that were there, because they had a live stream so I could follow, it was pure happiness, pure joy. Everybody was so happy, and it's metal and it's dark, and they sing about horrible wars, but everybody's just high, this music and sharing it. It's something to really look forward to.
Yeah, it's I have a feeling you're going to get this deafening wall of roaring fans who are just so excited to be out and participating in a concert. It's going to be electric. I just know it is.
I'll be roaring with them.
Yeah, it's getting me excited just to think about, because I've seen some other bands starting to very slowly publish tour schedules. And I know there's always sort of fingers crossed that nothing crazy happens, but I feel like you do. I'm optimistic that the worst is behind us. The world's going to go forward. And so let's go back though now. I want to talk a little bit about your pre-music days. As a child, I read you wanted to be a biologist. Is that accurate?
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. What was the impetus for a young woman to want to be a biologist? Was just someone you know?
I wasn't even a young woman. I was really a child, but I was in love with everything that was natural, the natural world, everything nature around me, fascinated by everything, and I don't think I understood what a biologist is, what that means to be, but I understood that when you do that, then you have a very deep meaning of nature, and you learn a lot about species and the planet and how things work. That I really don't have that type of brain to ever become one. I had no idea, but I just love nature, and I connected that to biologists because a lot of, documentaries and stuff that was available at that time, pre-internet, was yeah, very fascinating to me. And biologists made those, so I wanted to become a biologist.
That's really, really cool. And then later, you actually had a species of beetle named after you, right?
Yes.
I can't pronounce this. Can you pronounce it for us?
No, I can't either. It's this Latin name with bit of my name in it.
It's
But
something
how?
like Temestosternus for Janseni. I probably
Yes.
didn't do that great, but this was the scientist's name was Andre Vagel. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. What an honor.
Absolutely. I mean, the thought that there is a species here in the planet that yeah, got named after me. Uh, yeah, it's very, very special. There, as the album says of Nightwish, there are endless forms, the most beautiful on this planet, but not one actually wears my name.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. Um, skipping, and I've got you're going to see method to my madness. I'm kind of walk forward in time. But do you separate from music, like one of the defining things I would say, because I'm a dad, is that you in 2017 you announced the birth of your daughter, and my question there is that did that event lend anything to your approach to music, whether it's in how you feel the lyrics you may be conveying, or in any way. And the reason I ask is because I remember when my daughter was born, something, the moment I was in the delivery room and the moment I saw her, something, a physiological change. I became a dad in a way that I couldn't have anticipated. And it,
Mm,
it changed, it colored the way I think about things. And
mm.
I just wondered, since as a musician, if, and I may be drawing a correlation that doesn't exist, but I just was hoping you could, give us some insight on how that may have broadened your thinking about being a musician, or how you create music.
Yeah, you're spot on when you say that there's something changing fundamentally in you when you go from um, being yourself and maybe a husband or a wife or a friend or a daughter, a mother, if a daughter or a son, or things you have been, and then you become a parent. Now you are somebody's mother or you're somebody's father, and that is a change that you can read about and you can hear other people babble about, and other parents are going to tell you that everything's going to change, and always you really cherish the first years because everything goes so fast, and it's all very true, but you don't know until you live it. And so I share that experience absolutely, and I thought it was quite a task to go from being a musician to being a musician and a mom, because I am somebody who does things 100%,
Yeah.
and you cannot be 200% because there's still only one of you. So how do you divide your love and devotion to these two big things in your life? Family, my daughter, my husband, and of course also my parents, my family, and my career. And I thought that was quite a yeah, quite something to do because I want to be equally dedicated, and you need to find your balance there. When Freya was 11 months old, we started our 7 weeks tour in the U.S. Having her with me the whole trip, that was a huge change to how I would tour before, and super enjoyable and unforgettable, but incredibly tough because even when you have somebody with you to take care of your child when you're working, as soon as you're not working, you're a mom, and
Yeah.
especially to basically still a baby, there's nobody really replacing you there either,
Yeah.
which nobody will be able to do anyway, even now she's a little bit older. But it's definitely a life-changing and enriching experience. I'm very, very happy that I get to have both, because it is a choice and a commitment to make for life. So of course, as soon as you say I'm going to be a mother, I'm going to be that. Also when I'm on tour, also when we're making new albums, and the way you regard the world, music, emotions in general, it's definitely changing. And during the pandemic, I've been actually writing stuff that hasn't been come out or haven't been able to make that next step there. But there definitely you want to put things in there of you actually it should be one big love declaration to your child. But I've never been really good in writing love songs, so it's going to be wrapped up differently. But yeah, it's a beautiful, life changing experience for sure, and it seeps through everything I do from the moment that she was there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I suspected as much. Kudos to you for balancing the two. I've said this before on my show. I think that the work that a mother does is criminally sort of underappreciated, in at least in the society that swirls around me. So I have a lot of regard for women who make that kind of commitment. Um, let's talk about go a little bit into your voice. So you have you have a very beloved voice. When you go around the internet and you see the the lists that they create, you're always on the lists,
Yeah.
and rightfully so. But if we kind of just click a little deeper, you do possess this unique ability to sing with a clean voice, both in a very sort of covered tone, um, operatic sort of way, and have that sort of richness and roundness in the quality. You can certainly belt and hit those things with just a lot of fire when you want to. You can sing with grit. I watched a bunch of videos getting ready for this of music I hadn't heard, where you just really get into that aggressive sort of growl and move in and out of the clean tone and the growl with such facility. And so there's all of this. Your voice is very complex in that way, but you do it with such ease across these various colors. I wanted to ask. I know that you spent some time at the Dutch Rock Academy, and later it says the Conservatorium Tilburg, if I have that right.
Mm-hmm.
Were these places central to your development of this ability to broaden your voice in all of these ways, or did you come into it with a lot of natural ability to do those things?
I would say it's probably a bit of both. I'm very lucky to be gifted with the voice that I have, which seemingly has no real restrictions in, okay, shall I try this or shall I try that? And thanks to my studies, I got in touch with a lot of things that I could do with it. However, so Rock Academy was a real study, yet the school at the time was completely new. It was the first time they were teaching pop and rock music on the same level as classical music in the Netherlands. This was back in '99. And with that, I became sort of the guinea pig of that type of schooling in the Netherlands, along with my co-students, which meant that not everything was really there ready, as in this is the path you're going to be following. Of course, they made a plan, but then they were going to adapt and change and listen to us. We were asked to give a lot of feedback, which resulted into really actively thinking about the type of education we were getting. And at the same time, I already was singing in After Forever, which was a metal band. And I was trying all kinds of stuff with my voice that I couldn't really do at school, not at the Rock Academy, because I was the only one using my voice like that. They kind of said we're not going to do that because you're the only one doing it. Great reason. Thank you so much. So, and one day we had this masterclass of a teacher that's actually teaching at the conservatory. And after that class, I was like, okay, this guy, I want to have lessons with him. And from there, I really, really grew. Because it's a very personal thing. I think having a good click with your vocal teacher is essential for the actual development, because it's very personal, it's very emotional, and it's not just a physical thing. You need to push these and these buttons, and then when things happen, you need to sort of feel safe enough and inspired enough to grow. And I really did that under his lead. And from there, I developed myself slowly but surely. But I would say that the curiosity always stayed on. So long after my studies, when I stopped with After Forever and I started my band ReVamp, also in the Netherlands, I was so angry with the world and so angry in general. I wanted to just puke out so many things. And from that came way more aggressive music. And my voice needed to be way more aggressive for that. So I started to, try to understand how that works. And in the process, I need to really state that the development of vocal techniques that are non-classical are relatively young. Classical music, so operatic singing, the techniques behind that, they're several centuries old. But techniques, vocal techniques from non-classical singing, they're only a few decades old. Especially singing, if you really sing, then you sing opera. For that, there are techniques, and if you don't do that, you don't use your voice correct. That's something that in the beginning of the 1900s, that was a very normal thing to say. And so when a rock academy comes along 90 years later or so, and they say we're going to make a study out of that, it wasn't like there was something really ready. The techniques are just a couple of decades old, and they're in a constant change. And even throughout my life and throughout this, constantly new things are happening, and I'm trying to follow them. And that's how I taught myself how to growl and how to sing with a raw edge without ruining it in here, and adding it to the palette. But I have to really say that despite all the knowledge of techniques and my interest in it, I'm a real nerd when it comes to that. I would say the thing that really, really helped me to really become who I am today is actually teaching, becoming more mature, I found a way to really transmit what I'm feeling into my voice. And I've always done that, but it never came out as good as it does nowadays. And that is not something that I can read in any vocal technique. That is something that you have or you don't, and you have to learn it, how to really depend, and it doesn't matter what you sing. You can either recite your shopping list. If you have a certain emotion you put through it, people will fucking feel it. And that is something that I didn't really understand back in the days. And I think I've learned that mainly through singing Nightwish's music. Tuomas's words, our songwriter, he has this fantastic ability to put emotion into music, and I am the transmitter of that. But in order to be that, I have to really understand it. I have to really feel it, and that taught me enormously much.
Yeah, boy, you said so many great things there. I have to ask you. I did see that you taught for a while, and the name of your course, I think, was "Want to Be a Star." Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's a very, very long time ago. I put that was one of my projects at school.
Okay.
To put up like a master class or a workshop, I think. Yeah, so I did for a while. I had like private classes and I did workshops and master classes. Master classes came when I got a bit more of a name. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I taught for 10, 15 years.
Okay.
But ever since Nightwish, I really don't have any time apart from an occasional master class. I just really, I didn't really found the time for it. And now during the pandemic, I could have maybe done more, but I wanted to put that energy into being creative and not into teaching. Then again, I still think that teaching, also this, just like with concerts, it's nice to do it in person.
Yeah. And you answered my question. I was going to ask if it's still something you had time to do.
No, what I did do, however, not replacing the real thing, but I put on a few master classes on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
Where I go through a couple of basics, so for people to maybe have as a practice material, I run through the basics of understanding how things work.
Okay, good. Well, when we point people to your website, they can. I'm sure you have a link to your YouTube, so they'll be able to find some of that. Okay, let's talk then more specifically about your music. So we've already kind of mentioned After Forever was the first band. You were 16 is when you joined. That's super young, Floor. How's that happen?
Well, I was singing and playing guitar. I was writing some songs of my own, and I used to play. I had friends who really loved what I did, so whenever there was a little party of us hanging, they would ask me to play them. And at one of those parties was a friend of the guys in After Forever, and
Okay.
he knew that I was into metal as well, and they were, a metal band. But you have to think teenagers, pre-internet, pre-self-recording systems, laptops and stuff that were affordable. We didn't even have a cell phone yet, or maybe just the first ones.
Right.
Yes, I'm that old. So it's a bit of a different time. So we spent, as soon as he said, well, they are looking for a background vocalist, because women in metal, it wasn't really happening that much yet. But they were looking for a backing vocalist for the guy who was growling, and I was totally into The Gathering, which is a Dutch metal band. And I was like, oh yeah, I would definitely love, to join. And so for the first month, I was there coming up with vocal lines as like a backing vocalist. But quite soon, that guy who did the growls, he left, and I became the main singer. And with that, we were really one of the first in the Netherlands. But because of the success of The Gathering, there was actually a platform for it. It was interest in there. So that's why we quite soon after touring a little bit in the Netherlands, which is a very, very small country, we got to sign a record company, a record contract, which of course we never should have signed. It was completely shit. So we made all the classical mistakes there. But hey, we did have a record label, and there we went with our first album when I was 18. And yeah, it brought me to a lot of places. So it's but I as soon as things really start to become a little bit more serious, and that we talk about many years, the love for it was very, very big. It was very, very serious. We took ourselves very serious. We really wanted to get there.
Yeah.
And so we rehearsed twice a week. We were in touch quite a bit, after a while, even by email and stuff like that. Yeah, and then we got our first website, and all of that started to happen. Yeah.
So the one of the things I noted there is that from what I gathered in some of my research is you were a central songwriter in that band once things kind of got rolling.
Yeah, not instrumentally, but I'm responsible for all the vocal lines, and that is an essential part of the music, I would
Absolutely.
say.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the because there's so many things I want to cover, we could spend so much time just on After Forever. But you guys did the album Invisible Circles, and
Mhm.
it's it has some heavy themes, that album.
It really does.
How is you being the person responsible for conveying these themes, writing the lyrics and these melodies? What was that like? Like, what was the source material, and how did you that's quite the challenge to convey. And you don't have to give us all of the storyline, but it deals with some childhood trauma and abuse issues, correct?
Not abuse as a physical or sexual, but definitely mental.
Mental, yeah.
An unwanted child, self-centered parents, and the title means that you. It usually comes full circle. A not loved child becomes the parent of a child he or she can't love,
Yeah.
and it just continues. And somewhere in the story, the child, and even with help of the grandparent, tries to break through these invisible circles in order to break the chain. And I can say, I'm very relieved that it's nothing autobiographical. I have had the joy of growing up with my both parents being happily married, and we moved around a lot, but that was the only thing that was a little shit every now and then. So I come from a really, really safe background.
Yeah.
But most sources come from my ex-boyfriend was the guitar player in After Forever, and I was with him for many, many years. And he worked in a school and worked with a lot of children who didn't have such a lucky upbringing as I had. So he would come home sometimes with stories about it. And yeah, that spiked that for me formed the base of the story. And yeah, unfortunately, there are so many examples that it's not really hard to make a story out of it.
Yeah, you did an excellent job. I listened to that record, and I
Thank you.
commend people who are watching now or who see this later to go and check it out. It's cathartic in some very interesting ways. I, like you, had a very good childhood, but it allows you to sort of hold that at bay as you take this journey and understand it. I think it's a really, really good record. Um,
Thank you.
and
I
there's
haven't talked about it in many years. It's really nice to go back into it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot there. In After Forever, I think part of what impresses me is you came into that so young. I mean, I remember my musical efforts at that age, and they were so immature. uh,
But I have to say, so do I see myself if I listen to our first album or even the second. I'm beyond proud of it still, don't get me wrong, but there is a lot of growing there,
sure,
both musically as lyrically. Also in the I'm Dutch, so English is not my native language, but I was fascinated about it. I have a thing with languages, so I tried to use as many complicated words as I could, just because I thought it sounded so fantastic.
yeah,
Not always rightfully using the words though, or not even having the exact right pronunciation, not even really have a great understanding of the differences in English, British English, American English, even Australian English, that there is fundamental differences. But it was a way for me to express myself. And throughout the years, yeah, you form yourself into trying to write something that works for you and hopefully for other people too.
no, I think I love all that stuff. I was listening to a record the other day by a band called Tears for Fears. They wrote a record called The Hurting, and
Mhm.
they were really young, and there's just all of this emotional, like deep emotional pain being evidenced in it, and they were
Yeah.
really young when they wrote it. And I think it's kind of a cool document of who you were at that time, in addition to
Yeah,
being a
it's
cool record,
unique.
right?
Absolutely. No, and I'm very grateful for it. I mean, the first records, I didn't really always have the possibility to really put in that much of myself, as in write about something I went through or something that I wanted to communicate. That came a little bit later. But Invisible Circles was a great way for me to get into storytelling in that sense
Yeah,
differently. And later on, way more. I mean, in ReVamp, it was basically just one big emotional bomb that I needed to get out. And most of the lyrics there are very personal. The rock project I did, Northward, a lot of very personal stuff in there. Uh, and it was great to get it off my chest.
yeah,
And also great to sometimes get reactions back, like, I really feel you there. I really recognize myself in it. Thank you for sharing this with me. But it's interesting to see that everybody will read my lyrics differently than I do when I wrote them. They
sure.
will live them differently throughout their eyes and their lookage of life, and maybe even through time, that you have a lyric that really connects with a part of your life that later on doesn't have that same meaning. But it's a very subjective thing, and that's the beauty of it, because in that sense it can never really be wrong, unless of course you use the English language wrong. You just,
Yeah. No, I think it works on many levels because I agree with you. We all bring uh, a different set of experiences to something, but I think there's also value to the idea that as humans, we have shared experiences. People who have experienced, abuse, all of the contributing factors may not be the same, but the feelings and the I guess the pain, the wounds that lingers, those things have enough of a sameness that when you sing about it, someone else can still feel it. It's
yeah,
not foreign. That
no,
and so I think it works on both levels, at least to me. And
yeah,
when I listened to the record, even though I have had a happy childhood, I was able to conjure some of those feelings. So
yeah,
kudos to you on that.
no. Thank you.
And you said something important there, I think, that bears on so much of your career. You talked about storytelling. Um,
Mm.
we, in looking at so much of your collaborative stuff that you've done with Arjun Lucasen, um, gosh, I'm looking at a bunch of them. The one you did with Timo Tolkki. Am I saying his name correctly?
As good as it gets.
In Avalon, there's so many. And interestingly, one of the characters you played was a biologist in the Source,
Yeah,
which I thought's kind of fun since you were a budding biologist as a
absolutely.
kid. But so much of this work is narrative driven. It's concept albums and story. So
Mm.
it seems as though I don't know if you fell into this or this was just something that was inside you, but you become very good at relating narrative through music. Um,
Thank you.
is that something, do you think you came by naturally, or is some of it a consequence of so much of your work sort of requiring you to tell stories?
Um, yeah, I think a little bit by doing it and trying to really understand how I can transmit what I feel. Um, yeah, and as I told earlier, I feel that Nightwish really helped me in growing, becoming better at this. Not only feeling it myself, but transmitting what I feel, allowing my feelings to, um, yeah, be the power behind it,
Yeah,
and in that sense, becoming very genuine in what I transmit. It's still multi interpretational, but I mean it like this,
yeah,
and you may take it in your way, but because it's so genuine, you might feel it,
yeah.
and
Makes
that is
sense.
something that I noticed is very strong. And if you then have then I can sing like I did. I sang the song "Shallow," which I think is a nice song, and it has a little bit of meaning in it. But for me, not that much. But there is a feeling in that song that I do feel, and I can transmit that, and
Yeah,
it comes out. But if you then give me a concept, if you give me a real story, that is so much easier to go into, even though not always when I record something for Arjen, for example, Arjen Lucas, whether it's for Star One or for an Arjen project, I don't really understand the full story yet. So I get an idea of it, but yeah, I really need to feel the song, and if a song is good, it does a lot of the storytelling for me. It's not just the words; it's also the natural feel of what the song is
right.
doing, and where the dynamics need to come, and where what emphasis I need to use and what words to really spit out the meaning of them. And even that, like I said, regardless of knowing if I know the whole story or not.
Yeah. Well, that's a place where even before you got to Nightwish, you think you were doing really, really fine work. Um,
Thank you.
and I was gonna do a one nod to Star One. I had Russell Allen on the show not too long ago, and he sure thinks highly of you. Um,
Well, we've been friends for a long time. Not having that much in touch lately, but yeah, I mean, he was. I met him when I was 21. Yeah,
oh
it's
well, yeah.
almost 20 years ago now. So
Well, that
he's a great guy,
he is.
and he's my idol, the voice of metal for me, and rock. I mean, he can do anything. But if you talk about like feelings in a voice, transmitting
Yeah,
like emotion,
I
well, there
agree.
you go.
I agree. He's yeah, and so this is not to put too fine a point on it, but when Ariam is putting together sort of a super group, which at its inception was going to have Bruce Dickinson in it, and then there's things happened so that it didn't have Bruce Dickinson, but he assembled some just amazing, amazing voices, and you and Russell, in my mind, kind of lead that troop, and so yin and yang there or something. But that's another one that I commend people to, and I think it's also a place where your gift as a vocalist and your growing narrative sensibilities begin to sort of lock really, really well. Um, the last question
Well, getting a lot of compliments here. Thank you.
well, I think it's important to say, and this is some of the information I want people to take away from the show, so that they if they know you less well, they come. We can point them towards your work. Um, I have one last question on After Forever before we move on, and that is, you did a song called "Living Shields" on the Reimagine record.
Yeah,
That's a really powerful song. I
yeah.
can you will you take just 10 seconds or 20 seconds and tell us about it? Because I think it's an important song.
It's inspired on a situation that happened in Russia somewhere, where there was fights between Russia and another country that used to be Russia. I don't even understand Chechnya. I don't really know how to pronounce it, but anyway, two groups of grown-ups fighting over land, whatever, and they used children as living shields in this battle. And sometimes news hits you like it hits me now thinking about it again, because it's so wrong and so sick that I had to write about it, so that
Yeah.
became Living Shields.
Yeah, uh it's such a disgusting practice. I mean, war.
Unbelievable how little is left of your humanity if you can do that.
Yeah,
It's still a child, whether it's from the other group or not.
yeah,
Unbelievable.
yeah.
So
I mean,
that's
war
about
itself is
it.
disgusting, but of
Yeah.
all of the things in the tactics of war, um, I don't know something lower than that. So I was when I returned to that cut, um, it hit me because that stuff's I've seen that in the news in the intervening years, and so that's one that's got continued saliency. A very powerful track um, from your After Forever days. Um, are you okay if we go a little over time?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. So on, let's move forward to ReVamp. Uh, this one you kind of founded. This was Floor
Yeah.
Jansen founding and going to be your baby. And you did all the songwriting on this. Did you get into the instrumental part as well as the vocal stuff in the songwriting?
Yeah, but I did not do that by myself. So
Okay.
there's a lot of stuff based on stuff I wrote, but since me playing, heavy guitar is completely, it's not happening. So it's based on
Okay.
either me acoustic guitar or piano things. Sweet Curse, for instance, is entirely mine. Um, and there are more songs that I did way more in, but I was very lucky with very gifted band members as well there for the heavy riffing and
So and it looks like you have remained friends with all of the folks from After Forever. You've various incarnations of bands that you've guested on or continued to write with. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, when you stop a band after 12 years, it's almost like ending a marriage, which never really happens without ugly words being said.
Mm.
But with the vast majority of the group, I'm on absolute perfect terms, and at least speaking terms with everybody. So yeah, I wouldn't say I left I left a lot of a horrible relationship, but you can't have a 20-year plus career with everybody happy always.
Yeah, that's fair. I want to ask just briefly before we go move to Nightwish. You've been pretty open about going through some burnout. I think in 2011.
Yeah.
Was this just a consequence of so much work, touring and writing and performing, or did you have? And you don't have. Not that I'm asking you to share, but were there other things bearing on you outside of music?
Um, I would say a combination of a lot of things. But funny enough, and that was something that I learned, and it's still an ongoing learning curve. A lot of things has to do with how much you do and how intensely you do it.
Yeah.
So in the time when After Forever stopped and I started forming ReVamp, at the same year, at that same time, the Netherlands hit an economical crisis.
Mm.
I used to work as a teacher and had all kinds of projects on the side that made my livelihood next to After Forever, and all of a sudden, none of it was left.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And in that, so I needed to find a job outside of music, which I then did and never did after. And at the same time, trying to form a whole new band, being insecure about what I actually wanted and how I wanted to proceed. from there, I did that job for maybe a couple of months, and then things became better. I started teaching at a school and then at another school. And there was this energy about it, like I was there and I'm now here again, and I really want to get back there. But giving things away to other people might result into other people deciding that things are not going to continue. So I'm going to do everything myself. And the schools where I taught were brand new schools without, or at least one of them was very new, and the other was older, but still didn't really have a good program. So let's start a school, and you're going to write what the students are going to do this year. Wow, no pressure there.
Yeah.
Especially since I was back in '99 part of this very first school that started without a real
Right.
program. At least that's how it felt like. So I didn't want to put my students through the same insecurity, and I worked my ass off to get a proper program for these kids, while starting ReVamp, while doing everything myself,
Yeah.
as in management. Oh, we're going to have merchandise, how many shirts, I'm going to print them, I'm going to personally fold them, I'm going to sell them. I mean, it went into extremes. And after a while, of course, yeah, your body says, you know what, this is way too much.
Yeah.
I went to the doctors. Hey, I just had 15 throat inflammations, and I feel like, shit. I looked like shit. I was pale. I was gray. I was basically, I was so tired. And the doctor was like, yeah, it's a little bit weird because you're not that old. So we're going to run a blood test again. We're going to run another blood test and another blood test. And he kept me, like that back and forth. Went to the hospital because my heart, I couldn't breathe anymore after a while. And they were like, yeah, we're going to check your lungs and you're going to check your heart. And congratulations, you are super healthy. And they kept sending me home healthy because my blood test didn't show anything. And I had a healthy heart, thankfully, until I collapsed, of course. But nobody said it might actually not be physical and it might be something else.
Yeah.
So by the time that I stopped, I couldn't do anything anymore. And that I take them highly responsible for that lack of estimation of my of how I was doing. And once you hit the bottom that far, it takes a lot of time for you to come back. So that was a year and a half of my life. And by the time I started to feel a little bit better, I could plan ReVamp number 2, and there were a lot of things that I had to cancel. So maybe try and plan that again. And then I got this call from a Finnish band called Nightwish. Hey, you know what? We're in the US on tour, and can you come now? Do you know the set? And that's how I got back on my feet.
Well, you're, as I've become more aware of what is often called burnout, you are by no means the only one. There are so many musicians who go through this. We're glad. People. You're right. People.
I mean, it's a personality thing. It really is. And you know what? I think I really hope that society is going to pick up on the signals to start with. It really depends on where you work. But I was in a group where I was talking about everything. So yes, I did group therapy, which I first thought was horrible, but I learned so much because there we were. There was a teacher, there was an accountant, different professions, different ages, both sexes equally represented. It's not about what you do. Yeah. It's about how you do it. And music, yeah, sure. I think there are a lot of very, very sensitive musicians like myself that work through their emotions and work with everything that we are. It's not just what we do. We are musicians, so we put everything in there. And with that, we are even more, we're in a higher risk group of getting ourselves completely sucked into it without the ability to say no when it's actually healthy to do so.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you were doing kind of everything. So we're all very glad that you worked through that. We're all very glad that you got that call from Nightwish. When I was talking to Tuomas, I believe I heard him say that you had only a few days to prepare to go and sing that set. Is that
in Seattle?
Yeah, that's right. And that's where not that you would remember, but that's where we met. You did that show, and a good friend of mine, whose name is Megan Lindholm, also known as Robin Hobb, is a writer that Tuomas has read.
Yes.
And Megan's a friend of mine because I also write books, and so she brought me down, and I got to meet you guys, and it was the first show that you sang. It was thrilling. No one like you nailed it. And if you missed something, nobody knew. I mean, if you prepared all of that in a couple of days, that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I had my flight on Saturday, and the show was Monday. So yeah, no, it was a crazy little amount of time. I had like pieces of paper on the stage on the monitors. Not that we used them, but now we use them for the papers as reminders of like, oh yeah, the lyrics are going like this, and it was crazy, but it was for me the best way to kick out of the pandemic and get this pandemic. I'm sorry, now I'm switching back to the wrong crisis. Of the burnout like that, and just all of a sudden be back in the thing I love the most. It was the most fantastic reminder of, yes, of course, this is where you live for. This is who you are. And scary, yeah. Oh, I've never done anything more scary, but it was a fantastic thing to see and see that people appreciated what I did. As soon as news came out that I was actually going to stay on board, the sales in several parts of the world started to go up.
Wow, that's awesome.
On ticket sales, pre-sales for tours after that. And the whole tour, and especially, of course, that night in Seattle, where it was basically, just so you know, there's a different singer here tonight. One person wanted to have his ticket money back. So it was a fantastic thing to experience, and quite a kickstart to start a career in a band of Nightwish's magnitude.
Yeah, there's you'd be hard pressed to find a vocalist that could have not just done the show, but done and filled the vocal slot in Nightwish, but done it so well, and taken it to new places vocally. I read that. And I think that this is a compliment that Thomas pays you either by inference, or maybe he said it explicitly, but that you've been on other interviews that I've read where you've talked about how he's pushed you, and I think what I read was had a lot to do with like going lower into your register and singing more intimately. I wanted to ask you a little bit about that because, you already came to the band with just this soaring voice that can hit notes that many can't. And, you're very battle tested, so to speak, musician, and you knew you could tour, you knew you could record, you had the experience and the maturity as a musician. But then to have, this songwriter say, "Hey, Floor, I want you to do even more things."
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. Give us an example of a song. I think I even was reading one where he was asking you to do things that maybe you hadn't done before.
Well, with Endless Forms Most Beautiful, it was for the first album that I sang on, an entire album of a band I call my band, that I didn't write or co-write. So I needed to find a way to go into the songs. And of course I've been doing that with the older songs, performing them live, but now I have a songs that nobody else has sang. It's a blank sheet for me to fill in cooperation with Tuomas. And especially the smaller, softer songs, as you said, singing a bit lower without losing its intensity, that was something that I didn't really experience yet. And then he took it to a new level when Human Nature came, and he sent in the music, and I started listening to it, and I was like, this is the vocal line? It's hard to play when you do it with your fingers. How am I gonna follow these melodies with my voice? Wow. Yeah, so they're definitely in the speed of it and the complexity of the lyrics, and that became a whole new challenge. I mean, there are a few high notes here and there, but I dare to say that high notes are more in my comfort zone than some of the really fast stuff, like the verses of Shoemaker, really, really difficult to sing. Verses of Music, really difficult to sing. Without that, it sounds like I'm just looking at my paper, trying to follow the words and the notes. Yeah. It has to sound still as if I'm telling the story, and if it needs to sound easy, vocally easy. which it really isn't. So yeah, I haven't rehearsed as much ever as I did for Human Nature, and that's far into my career. So I think it's super cool because I have that kind of personality that needs challenge.
I will. It's impressive to me because one of the first things I noted about Nightwish music with the vocal lines is that the phrasing, the lyrical phrasing, very often leaves very little room for taking a breath, and so you've got to be
Yes.
artful when and where you do that so that you're not and because a lot of the music has such the vocal line has such a rhythmic relationship to the rest of the music. If you're late or miss something, it's going to sound off. So
Yep.
that's a vocal technique that I think is really unique in Nightwish music.
Yeah, you're right there. Yeah, because it's a connecting factor between the instruments and the storytelling part with the actual lyrics and the feelings and the emotion that still need to come along.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely true.
you do a
And then
fantastic job. Keep going.
thank you so much. Yeah, it's a lovely puzzle to work on. Which fortunately we take a lot of time to rehearse, and the band has always done that, but they haven't always been able to rehearse with their singers. So for Friendless Forms Most Beautiful, it was the first time that they had their female singer joining rehearsals,
Oh wow.
which for me was a bit new because I always rehearsed and I've always been part of the whole process. So of course I'm here. And it really enriched the band feeling and the connection between vocals and music. And knowing this, I think, made Tuomas take a step even further during those Human Nature rehearsals, which were definitely we couldn't even play too long because of the complexity of it. Your brain is just, if your voice doesn't already think like, oh, this is quite a bit, your mind is just boiling with everything new. And yeah, and then there's the creative puzzle. I mean, he makes the lyrics and the vocal lines, he plays them on a piano, and so I learn the melody and I learn the words, but then I need to learn how to sing them. And the cool thing with having a rich palette, so to speak, in different kinds of colors that you can choose from, there comes in my creative element where I can kind of see it. Does this need a rocky edge, or should it be a bit softer? Is it going to be very airy, or is it going to be full bodied? Is it, well, of course, the end of Shoemaker, that was clear. It's going to be full blown opera, which a lot of Nightwish fans have been waiting for.
Yeah.
And it was a perfect moment for me to actually really go there. But also there, he really challenged me, because when I sang it the first time, it was like, yeah, I hit the notes, but it's not there. And then we re-recorded it, and I hit the notes, and everything was perfect. Apart from that, it didn't really feel quite there yet, until we recorded the choirs and everything came into place. And then I actually recorded it in this room I'm sitting in right now.
Oh wow.
For the third time. All the notes still working exactly as I did it before, but then something else happened. And it came out the way I didn't even know I could sing opera like that. It was super, super cool.
Yeah.
So there you go. Once again, with getting really, really challenged and taking your time to really figure out how to do it, and dotting the I's together. That's what a band does. Super cool.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
As far as much success as you have had, and this is why I like to walk up a career like yours. So much success individually in groups that you were part of. So much really wonderful music in collaboration. And we'll have to just point people to your websites and your Wikipedia page for them to dig into all of it. But I would argue that when you got to Nightwish, so many of these things really came together in very powerful ways. Part of this is, there being music that's asking you to do things you maybe hadn't done before, because I was very impressed on both of the most recent records that you recorded on with Nightwish, in the sort of the lower tones having a sort of beauty without being soft, if that makes sense. I think you called it full bodied. You've always had the high stuff, so not that should be taken for granted. It's just, but that's.
No, but you mean like adding things and
yes, and
growing and finding new things.
And you the colors that and I noted there were places where you'd add just a little bit of grit here and there, and so the instincts you have to do the storytelling and lend weight to particular turns of phrase inside the music is special. floor. And I think it's because it's like you say, there you can hit notes, but that's not exactly the same thing as making music. Um,
No,
and
no,
the
true.
the art that you create is the latter. You have the technical facility, and that's growing, which is really exciting to hear. I mean, at this late stage in your career, you're adding things to your vocal tool belt. Is
Yeah.
that's really really cool. Um, okay, well then the just a couple quick questions, and then we'll close out. You have some shows coming up that you like 2 days from now. What's the
Yeah.
music we're hearing at this concert?
Well, it's gonna be a few cover songs actually,
Nice.
and a run through my musical career.
Okay.
Um, I did this Dutch TV show a couple of years ago, which kind of kicked off a solo career without having any solo music and still being super busy with Nightwish. I sing the songs that I sang in this TV show, and from there, during the shows, I wanted to um, introduce more of the things that I've been doing to the audience that just met me through this TV show, so a whole new audience, and at the same time please the audience that I had already have. Since I wasn't a newbie, there were a lot of people coming that already knew me. So in that sense, I made a mix. I have a band with me that are like accession musicians, incredibly talented. They were with that TV show as well. That's how we met, and they get to play everything from these poppy covers that we try to kind of make a little bit heavier to make it sound towards my sound, as a bit milder ReVamp songs. We play everything from After Forever, Northward, ReVamp, and even Nightwish. So that's
That's really cool. We
yeah.
didn't get a chance to talk about Northward,
Oh,
which is I listen to a bunch of that music, and that's for folks who like. I would characterize it in broad strokes as sort of just really great hard rock, but
it is, yeah,
it's
absolutely.
great music.
Nothing metal about it.
Yeah, no, but I mean that's just that's not to marginalize it at all. Like it is really great hard rock music. And you
Yeah.
sing that it shows yet another complexion in your voice. I wanted to ask though, this is it. I read something about this TV show you did where
Mhm.
you've performed even some Phantom of the Opera songs. Is this part of the show on Thursday, or is that a different thing?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. So the TV program it's called Beste Zangers, which in Dutch means best singers, which sounded like it is almost like a contest, but it isn't. They invite 5 singers or 7, God, I can't remember, a bunch of singers, and we're going to perform each other's songs, but we're going to make it sound like our own.
okay,
So I'm singing a pop song or even a reggaeton song that I try to make heavier.
nice.
Um, I did even Shallow because one of the girls there, she's a YouTube artist. She only sings covers. So I sang a cover of her cover, but I changed it into my own version. It's a really hard song to make it heavier, so we kind of downsized to make it into a ballad. I mean, a good song you can kind of mold into any form anyway, and yeah, that's basically how what I did. And then there's one episode where we sing duets with each other, and the guy I'm singing this with was the Phantom of the Opera in the Netherlands
Oh
back
man,
in the 90s. A huge hit it was. The music was extremely popular. But Nightwish also did the Phantom of the
that's
Opera,
right.
and so we kind of made like a mix of the two. And I got to sing that with him, which was basically as soon as I heard he was on the show, I was like, I need to sing that with him. He needs to agree.
I
Well, little did we know that would be it became a huge thing. It's
yeah.
so we're going to be doing that in 2 days as well.
That's what I was kind of leading towards because I watched a video of you singing with him, and
Yeah,
it's awesome. Um,
yeah.
so
Thanks.
I'm a fan of
Fireworks.
yeah. Really
Yeah.
really good. You were both just amazing. I'm a theater fan anyway, but then to get to hear you sing a song like that, and then this. So the natural question is: so you're singing the concert Thursday. Did I hear
Mhm.
you say there'll be like a string of these, or is this a one-time engagement?
This is just one thing. Yeah,
Okay.
a one-off show. And then in September comes the show I had to postpone, and one festival, and that's it for now for my solo endeavors. Mainly also because we kind of hope that Nightwish will be able to kick off that world tour, starting with a few festivals, and then hopefully we can do our European tour in November, December.
Yeah, I saw you guys are on the Hellfest bill.
Next year. Yeah, we were. Feels like we've been on the bill for years,
Yeah.
which is true.
Well, yeah, that was going to be my other question, which you answered, which was Nightwish tour. I guess there's no news yet, but our fingers are crossed that that'll get scheduled sometime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're putting everything into works to follow all the updates. We would have actually been able, I mean, I know that the US is doing really well when it comes to the virus and all, but it's impossible for us to get a visa, else we would have been actually able to come. But
yeah,
without a visa you can't do anything, and they can't get you a visa, so it's like, yeah.
Well, I wanted to tell you that, and I said this to Thomas when I got to chat with him. He, particularly with these last couple of records, he's just kind of tackled these ginormous themes, these archetypal themes. And he's fortunate that he's got you to sing them, and not just because of your voice, but as I was trying to kind of lay out, you've had this career where you've worked inside of needing to tell story. I care about this because I care a lot about music that actually has a narrative sensibility. I love other stuff too, but this is an area that is a passion of mine. So when these records came out, I was really excited because they're not heavy in sort of like a dark way, but they're like, the themes are big. You're tackling, archetypal things, and you do it so wonderfully. And your pedigree, not that you couldn't have done it anyway, but your pedigree and all that, you'd gone through with all the other previous work positioned you just to knock this out of the park. These records are so good. I know we've got Nightwish fans on watching, but if you're not a fan, or you haven't heard anyway these last couple of records, I really commend you to go and listen to them. It shows Floor, really firing on all pistons, all of these elements of her voice that we've talked about, and bringing that to bear on some really beautiful and also meaningful work that has conservation behind it with the World Land Trust and some other things we didn't have time to talk about. But they're kind of a tour de force, as they say, these records. And so it's really exciting to think about being able to see that tour when you hopefully come. I hope you come through Seattle when the time comes, so we get to see it. Me too.
I have a special connection to Seattle for always. So.
Yes, you do. That history, Nightwish history.
Absolutely.
The last question I usually ask my guests are there other mountains you want to climb? It could be a musical style or a musical thing that you don't have time for, but someday would, or it could be, you want to be a carpenter someday. I mean, is there a thing in you to do or try, but it's not going to happen until time permits?
Short term, I would say I've been working on the solo album since the beginning of the pandemic, or let's say a little bit before that, when that solo career ball started rolling in the Netherlands, and it really kickstarted some of my own creativity that I haven't really been able to use over the years, which is fine. But now it's nice that it gets out, and I would like to do more with that and actually finish that album and make those steps and find a way to combine a solo career with Nightwish and my life at home, which I even more value after spending so much time here in this green heaven where I live. And long term, my biggest desire is to keep doing this in a good balance between everything. And that might maybe sounds a bit cheesy or yeah, of course, but if I see how difficult that is for everybody that's been doing this for a long time, to keep a certain mental health, to keep a certain connection to the rest of the world, we are in a tour situation world, but the world outside of that bubble, that would be something I highly ambition, and to not lose my mind halfway being Mrs. Rockstar or whatever. And yeah, and being a very, very high sensitive person, I like to keep my sanity in the overflow of impulses and impressions that I get throughout these days. And yeah, can still come home to where I'm coming home to now. That would be a long-term dream.
Yeah. No, that's a for folks who maybe aren't as close to it, maintaining any degree of success as a musician, um, the demands of touring and the complication that can be with having a family and those relationships, those are non-trivial goals.
Yeah.
As we say, that's a lot. So that's a great ambition. And for fans of you, not just Nightwish, but of your voice and all the things you do, like we all hope you are successful at that. I
Thank
have a
you.
lot of confidence that that will be true, and I'm really excited to hear about this solo stuff that you're working on. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds really exciting.
It's nice to do. Like
Yeah,
with Northward, I tried to do something completely different. Like now I've been doing metal, 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 and I love it, but I'd like to do something else, and I got triggered to do something outside of the box, and it became rock. And with this, it's more of a need to not do metal or rock at all, and explore my voice in different ways and see how I sound if I take that heavy edge off without losing the intensity of music. And that is not so easy to do. So
yeah,
that I've been really doing that for more than a year without having. I wrote a lot of songs I will probably never use, and yeah, it's a process in the making, and I want to take my time for it, because kicking off something like this, you only do it once, and then you do it good. I don't just want to look, I wrote a song, like
yeah,
look,
yeah,
mom and dad, this is it. So it's a careful process, but it's super fun to do, and yeah, nice to use my creative energy in a different way, and my musicianship in the here and the now differently as well. So it's a cool development. And well, throughout this talk, I guess it became clear that I like to be challenged, and keep myself challenged, to not sit back and just see everything unroll as it is. So yeah, we'll continue on that path.
yeah. That's I don't know if you're gonna do it, but I read in your backstory that you played flute, you played piano. How fun would it be to if you do some songs where we get to hear you do those things too?
Yeah, if I was any good, I guess it would be cool, but piano playing has always been very functional. Put me next to anybody who can really play it. It's like nice.
Yeah,
And flute was something I really did, but it's a long time ago.
long
And
time.
instrumentally, I'm really not as involved, developed, or yeah, I never got as engaged as I am vocally.
Yeah. Well, we'll all just kind of bide our time, but I love the idea of you doing something that goes in a new direction. Because and this is one of the purposes of this show is to kind of get at the idea that musicians usually aren't one thing. You're very known as probably the best, if not voice in metal, female voice in metal. You're always in the conversation, and but that's not all you are. You did this rock thing, which we didn't talk about, but we'll put a link to, which is really cool. And there's people who are going to dig that maybe haven't heard Nightwish. And I think some of the stuff we heard on these last two records is suggestive of the fact that you can sing in with the intensity you're talking about in a different register and with a sort of just softer beauty than a lot of metal records will ever have. So if that's any indication of the kinds of things you're exploring, I think that's really, really exciting music.
Cool. Thanks
So
for saying.
okay, so thank you so much for being with us, folks. This has been Floor Jansen chatting with us on Breaking Absolutes. Floor, I know I kept you past your time, but everybody's happy that you spent a few extra minutes with us.
You're very welcome. It was very enjoyable to talk. Thank you for a very lovely conversation into the depth of my career. I guess I mean now we went over 20 years of things happening. So I
Yeah.
guess it would have been a little bit hard to push all of that in an hour. And I hope for everybody who is joining us here that it was enjoyable and that you're curious perhaps about some of the things you might not know about me. Peter, thank you very much for having me and being so well prepared about, well, those 20 years though. So that was very, very nice.
You're
Hopefully we'll meet again in Seattle, and me actually remembering now, because that first show, forgive me for, yeah, my brain was everywhere.
well. I'll say it one last time. Uh, I think it speaks to your professionalism that show there was never anything that looked off. Um,
Oh.
and yeah, it was. I think you created fans that night because you came in and did such a dynamic performance on such short notice. Like, yeah. So, and I think this Tuomas, the way he put it is, he goes, and the rest is history.
Yes, yeah. We didn't know that yet, but yes, it was. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was. It's nice to think back of that time because it was such a challenge. Yeah, yeah, it was
Well,
beautiful.
you've had an amazing career and it's far from over. So thanks again. I'm sure we'll meet down the road. And until then, take good care of
Hopefully,
yourself.
you too, and everybody watching and listening today. Thank you so much for that. Keep healthy, and hopefully, very very soon, life will continue in good health, and we can rock out
That's
in
right.
person. That would be good.
That'll be good. All right. Take care, Floor.
Thank you. You too.
Bye bye.
Goodbye.